Another guy who has moved outside of Prague, but he's been making, from what he told me, 6,000 liters of cider every year in the cellar in an apartment house in the center of Prague.
Hello, my name is Rio Windcaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world. Bringing us into episode 464 of Cider Chat was Dan Samek. He is from the country known as the Czech Republic, and he is based in the city of Prague. And he was telling us about a maker there who is producing 1,000 liters of cider, which translates to over 1,500 gallons of cider in the cellar. And you can only imagine what that cellar must be like. I'm thinking maybe arched ceilings and perhaps not a field stone, but some kind of bricklaying and just a cool climate. Must be perfect for making cider. And I had this opportunity to catch up with Dan face to face here in the U.S. We actually met a little outside of White River Junction because he is or was in the U.S. at the time with his wife and young son, because she had a Fulbright scholarship at Dartmouth College, which was right up the road. It's right on the border of New Hampshire and Vermont. A great location and a beautiful area. So Dan reached out to me a while ago, and how can we meet up? We were trying to figure that out. He only had one more week to be in the country, so I basically blended that into my recent May Vermont and New York Cider Tour that I took. And this was the first stop on the Cider Tour, and it was just a nice way to kick it off. Not only that, it was the most spectacular week of May. That region was just going into apple blossom time, a little bit behind my area where I am in Massachusetts. And so it was a fantastic trip. And it started with Dan. So we're going to be hearing about that. We're going to be learning a little bit about the Czech Republic from his vantage point. He is not a commercial producer. He is a cider enthusiast, but he has also distilled cider to make apple brandy. So, yeah, I think you're thinking like, that's pretty cool, right? So we're going to be hearing about that. Like, what is the legalities of that for somebody? And in back in my mind, I'm comparing the whole time what's like here in the U.S. Wouldn't it be cool if we could legally distill cider and work that out so we could actually figure out whether or not we want to go deep into that or just start passing those traditions down through families and not just, having to learn it out of a book, but actually have an oral history from one's family to pass that down. And I think that would just totally up our game, because this distillation is an art form, as is cider making in my mind. So we'll be getting to that featured conversation with Dan coming right up. We're going to be going to a wee bit of news from Out and About in Ciderville. And at the end of this conversation with Dan, I'm going to be posting another audio snapshot from the Flower Expo, which is a conference for cannabis businesses. In the last episode, which was with Zydeco Meadery, and that was our featured guest, Eric Depradine. Wonderful, wonderful episode with Eric. You should really check it out. That's episode 463. We were looking at these crossover industries, and we had the Apple Guy Flowers. That was Lucas from Apple Guy Flowers talking about his business. And I did that recording also at the Flower Expo. But I was really wanting to save two different recordings because I think it tunes us into crossover industries and learning from that. And in this case, I think you could learn a lot on how Bowie presented his business, which is called Paper Crane Cannabis. So we'll be getting to that. So stay tuned. This is a full episode, and I am stoked. I am on my summer seasonal every other week schedule right now, which is allowing me to be working behind the scenes on other projects that I need to be attending to, taking a little break because I need that mentally and physically, and also preparing for the upcoming Totally Cider Tour, the UK edition, which is rolling out at the end of August. And I feel like it was only yesterday that I was talking about it, but here we are. August is coming up really soon. I'm going to be sending out the packing checklist for all the folks going on that tour. And I'm getting ready. I was doing some shopping. Like, what am I going to wear on my feet? Anyways, this is going to be part one of a series now from the Vermont and New York Cider Tour, with the first stop being with Dan. But first, before we get to that, let's go with a wee bit of news from out and about in Ciderville. I know you like cider, and I can guess out the door that you like to have fun. And I have this cool list of events that are coming up. They're based in Oregon, but it's all at one place, and it's a place you got to know about. It's called Art and Science. And the folks who run it, their names are Kim Hamlin and Dan Rinke. And wow, the product is absolutely amazing. Kim does all the artwork for the labels. That alone makes the bottles a keeper. I had them both on episode 214 of Cider Chat, which was a couple seasons ago now, and then more recently on episode 267, that was a panel discussion called Fermenting with Quince. And that was a bunch of rock stars. We had Steve from South Hill Cider in the Finger Lakes region of New York, Martin of Pilton Cider, which is based in Somerset in the United Kingdom, and James Forbes of Little Pomona, which is based in Herefordshire in the UK. And I could guarantee you we're going to be trying both those ciders while we're in the UK on the Totally Cider Tour. Anyways, they have some events at Art and Science at their farm, which is called Roshamba Farm. And they have what is called, I just love it because I got this notification once again, and it says that they have concerts and campouts. And the first one is kicking off this weekend. So if you're listening to the podcast on the 2nd of July, 2025, well, then on the 5th of July, you can make plans now to attend their first in a series of concerts and campouts. And it takes place every Saturday. And how much freaking fun would that be to be at this beautiful farm out in Oregon, hanging out with fellow cider friends, listening to music, and then camping out. And they do have a little B&B there too. So if camping out isn't your scene, yeah, check it out and contact them. I'm going to have a link in the show notes for the comfort info and how to buy tickets and just to check out these folks because I absolutely adore them. Their cider's great, and the fact that they have such a fun event reminds me a lot of the Raw Cider Fest, which is a camp out and a cider fest too all at the same time. And something that we're going to be attending on the Totally Cider Tour, although our group will not be camping out. We're going to be doing a little bit more of a swank setup at the hotel, but you could do it too. These kind of events are just so amazing. So once again, that's Art and Science. The first concert series for the summer starts this coming weekend on July 5th. Once again, links in the show notes to that event. Coming up on August 16th in the Netherlands is a Cider Fest. This is being hosted by Sophie of De Grote Wij. She was on our podcast just 5 episodes ago on episode number 459. That was titled The Applefinch's Pet Gnats at De Grote Wij. She is based, and her family is based, to the east of Amsterdam, just outside of the city of Arnhem, which is spectacular. There's so much to do there. It's so accessible in the Netherlands to do something like this. The tickets are for under $10 US. It's €750. Totally doable. There's going to be other cider makers here. It sounds like it's going to be a talk. I'm going to have a link in the show notes to that event. And do check out her episode to kind of get you jazzed up. I imagine that this will be taking place again. So do stay tuned for that. I would love to go to that fest. My heart, a big piece of my heart is in the Netherlands. So I want to say hi to everybody there. You probably have heard me mention many times our friend Marcel. He has a cidery to the south of where this festival is taking place, and that is De Gardener. It means the gardener, and he's doing a whole bunch of stuff there too. So we're going to have links both to those Instagram feeds so you could check out both makers, and of course always a big hello to the folks at Elegas. So a lot going on. The Dutch have it happening, and they are amazing growers and fantastic cider makers.
Walking through the orchards,
time now for our featured presentation, a conversation with Dan Samek of the Czech Republic. We're going to be talking about the history of apple growing and cider making in the country, and Dan's journey to cider, which really took place from wine to an affection for Calvados, which I could totally relate to, and a little bit of info on, well, what you might expect by traveling to the Czech Republic. So without further ado, let's all grab a glass and join this chat with Dan Samek of Prague. We're here to talk about what's happening in the Czech Republic. I have been there. I've been to Prague. We beeline to the beer bar at that time. Why don't you fill us in? Like, is there an actual apple growing area?
Czech Republic would be an apple country, and fruit in general. You would have cherries, you would have plums, you would have pears. And like, let's say 100 years ago, we've been exporting fruit to Germany and other countries.
Okay.
So what you'll have in the countryside, you will have apple trees.
On the side of the roads, yeah.
Yeah, the roads are getting reconstructed, so the authorities are now putting the fruit trees down and plant maples so that they don't have to worry about fruit falling on the road. So it's actually, this will probably stay on the really side roads. And even though like the local people have to plea for the fruit trees to be kept there, and I hope it's not a legend, but as I know it, so this has history in the Barak times, in the 18th century, when it was decided from the then monarch to plant fruit trees by the road. So in case there's a war, soldiers have something to eat. So, and the tradition has pretty much kept, and you'll see orcharding books recommending varieties to be worthy of planting by the side of the roads because of their habitat.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Actual orcharding books, it would be in Czech.
Yeah.
Okay. Saying plant this or that variety.
It would just say like this is like right habitat, so it's good to plant by the side of the road.
Wow, my goodness, I love that. So that is like Austria, where we see that was a big initiative.
Yeah, the part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
It would be mostly eating apples.
That makes sense.
Czech Republic doesn't have much tradition of making apple wine, hence you won't have many useful cider varieties. The thing is, like, during the communist time, there was like do-it-yourself, not necessarily movement, but atmosphere. So you would have plenty of books, official ones, some very good ones about how to make home wine from what you can harvest, and like written by qualified people. Like, you could grab it, just apply it to making cider, and it's just what you need to do. And it's a book published in the 60s.
What is your curiosity about cider? Is this something that has always been part of your life, or is that more recent?
Well, I mean, I've been coming occasionally to France to harvest wine, and then I would grab a bottle in the supermarket there. But I didn't actually care what cider and where to get a good one, right? And then you would have it here as well, right? Like every other year you would have like a massive harvest on the trees. And so we like to hike with my wife through the landscape, and you just walk and there's just apples and fruits everywhere. And I was thinking, there's so much fruit, maybe I could just harvest it and make Calvados. Make a distillate.
Okay, you're jumping.
Yeah, so my path was through the idea that I would distill the fruit. And then somehow I found out that if I want to make an apple distillate, I need to make cider first. So I did do both and started like doing both. So.
My goodness. I love how you just, you go right to making Calvados, and as a big fan of Calvados, I totally get that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't legally call it Calvados, but I try. And I mean, it's different varieties, so... but I guess I did a pretty good job at my first try, so...
Oh, really? So you made the cider, it was a natural fermentation, I'm going to assume, or...?
Well, I'm not sure how to call it, because I wouldn't always let just spontaneous ferment, but I wouldn't usually use sulfur. I would, let's say, add just dry yeast without even bothering to start it. So I would have the apiculate yeast start in the beginning, and maybe slowly multiplying some cultured yeast alongside the ones that are in the juice.
I love it.
So it's a mix, right? Like it's not very controlled, and
well, it's a little bit controlled. I mean, you're controlling it somewhat. So
well, I'm mostly using, if I'm using cultured yeast, so I'm using 72B, which I like the flavor profile.
Yeah, that's a very popular 72B.
Yeah, I did try some others, but in the long run, they just don't make it. What's that? That's Scott's Lab?
Scott's Lab,
Scott's Lab, yeah. I did go through their brochures and tried what they are recommending, and just didn't like it, besides 72B. They might work better with filtered juice or with sulfited juice. They might work much better. The way I'm using it, it just doesn't got it for me.
Yeah. Is this part of your background? You said you were going to France for the wine harvest.
I mean, it was just like an autumn opportunity, right? To do some traveling.
What a great opportunity.
But I like to try new things.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was younger, I made my living with computers. Then I switched to doing hardwood floors.
That's a big switch. Yeah, something very concrete there.
Yeah, I mean, I can repair a house. I can do a bit of everything. So.
And did that then have you seeking out what was going on in the Czech Republic, or?
Well, kind of. I mean, like I had a look about how I should do it, right?
Okay.
Like, I mean, I've been, when I was in puberty, and 15 years old, I did ferment like red currant. And made some wine back then, but not really like follow it.
What's the drinking age in the Czech?
It's 18.
18, okay.
Yeah. But I just did these experiments, right?
Sure, not unusual.
Yeah, I think this was really a very, very, very bad headache drinking that.
Well, that happens. That's a good lesson. Drink the top shelf, baby.
Yeah.
Drink the top shelf.
So I had a look about some processes, how to make it, and there's a guy going by the name of Wine Punk is his website, and he's been doing all kinds of ferments, like natural wine stuff. In the years since, he has drifted towards distilling. They have a like artisan distillery going by the name of Landcraft. Their idea is to basically to get any apples someone doesn't want and
bring it in,
and experimenting with herbs. They are making liquors. They are making interesting stuff. So, but as far as I know, he has drifted from doing cider. I guess he just doesn't have time for that. But he had just very like simple instructions on his website, and he's kind of a matchmaker. He likes to organize stuff.
Network.
So he's been organizing cider meetups
and even still, or is that what something he's doing in the past?
I don't think there's one this year, but he like the last 14 years he's been trying to make a spring meetup of commercial and hobbyist people. So I took my first few liters of cider and went there. I think I didn't fare too bad.
No, well,
yeah.
I mean, everybody.
Some visitors were like, "Hey, this is good. I wanna buy everything," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I have like 10 bottles." Right? And they were, "Oh, okay, so that doesn't make too much sense."
And you probably can't sell it legally if you're just making it at home, or is it pretty lax that way?
You really wouldn't be able to sell high volumes, right?
Right.
But I think it's not too difficult to get commercial. I haven't really gotten into that.
Are you remaining an enthusiast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's a good place to be.
I mean, so Czech Republic is primarily a beer country, but it's a wine country as well.
Yeah.
And the most wine growing people are in the eastern part, in Moravia. Legally, what you can make at home, you can produce 2,000 liters of wine for your own consumption.
Wow. 2,000 liters of wine.
Yeah.
Versus in the U.S. it's 200 gallons, which is a lot less than.
Well, 200
liters.
gallons is a little bit less than the half. So
Yeah, but that's still a lot for.
yeah,
per
but you can legally make for yourself 200 liters of beer only.
Interesting. Interesting.
Because there were just people having their own orchards in the wine growing area, so they had 100, 200 plants. So they had to process it somehow, right?
Yeah, of course.
Even though they were not selling it.
My goodness, I love it. Wow. Yeah, it seems like some countries that are slowly evolving in the cider making and appreciation, it's such an opportunity to step in that door right now because the government's not really cracking down on it. They don't necessarily take it seriously.
There's been some effort to make sort of a body of cider producers so they could push their interest, but I haven't really followed what they got to, whether they had any success to even make cider defined in the law. So I can't comment on that. But there would be other people that possibly could.
So the wine punk who was setting up these meetups, was that like the primary cider meetup happening in the country? And are there more now?
It was the primary, and then there's another one which is happening every autumn. That's like a feast of cider.
Feast of cider. How is that said in your language?
Feast would be slavnost and would also mean a celebration.
Slavnost of cider? How do you say it?
Slavnosti cideru.
Okay, slavnost.
What are happening in Prague?
Okay, so Prague is the center point.
Well, it's the biggest city, has the most economic output, so there's obviously the most consumption, even though the production is not based in Prague. I did produce my cider in the center of Prague. I know of another guy who has moved outside of Prague, but he's been making, from what he told me, 6,000 liters of cider every year in the cellar in an apartment house in the center of Prague.
I love it. Wow. Where do you put that? I mean, that's a lot of cider.
Yeah, I mean,
your own dedicated room.
With cider you're okay, but what about all the bottles and stuff, right?
Yeah.
They tend to take more room than when you just have it in a large container.
Is it all in bottles primarily? Because if it was in kegs or like a key keg or something like that.
I would say there's still more bottles than cans.
Lovely.
Maybe it's also because canning equipment has like a steeper price point, right? When you start, you need to have a bigger operation.
Are folks like recycling bottles, as we would do here, taking off the labels of other bottles and then
Well, hobbyists definitely do.
Okay.
A friend of mine changed his career from being in the, let's say, non-governmental organization, observing the rule of law and how it's applied, to beer brewing. So he's been working in a beer shop so that he can get the taste of the beer of the world. So he has been supplying me with as many bottles as I wanted.
Good friend to have. Is that where you are based out of, Prague proper? Or
yeah, we do live in Prague. Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you were visiting Prague, or as you live there, is there a place to go in the, I'm going to say the city because it is, to find cider? There's
a shop dedicated to cider. There used to be a cider-specific bar at the, if I'm not mistaken, with the operation, and someone else took the bar over with a different concept. But people were still coming there asking for cider, so it sort of kept on going.
So so does that mean that there still is a cider-specific bar, somewhat?
I really cannot comment on that.
Okay, all right. But cider can be found in the city.
Yeah, I mean, well, so what you would have, the first cider producers appeared circa 2007, 2008, small ones.
Okay.
But then, say 2010 till 2015, there was a push of the commercial cider from the large breweries. And I guess it was a good thing, sort of, because it really, like, they put money into marketing, so they raised awareness of cider. even though like, their produce isn't anything to be proud of. It's sweet, it's not beer, so...
Gluten-free. That's a big, I don't know if that's a thing at all.
I mean, as they say, the rising tides lifts all boats, so it got much easier
Okay.
for small makers to actually like, I'm making cider and you don't have to explain what you're doing. So,
And it seems like there's a number of small makers in the Czech Republic.
I would guess like, if I would say 50, then I wouldn't be too wrong.
That's pretty darn good.
Yeah, and some of them started early, planted their own orchards with French varieties. Like there's Cider of Joachim Clement. If you would buy a bottle from them, so I guess it would be at least 4 years old. They have enough capacity and enough stuff and very good stuff.
Yeah.
I would really say like they are like they would have no trouble competing like worldwide.
That's fantastic, and that just it makes me feel so happy to hear that. You know?
They started early. They started thoroughly.
Well, I mean, let's face it. The Czech Republic is historically, in terms of fermentation, has really set the bar high, and we're talking about like the beer, right? So that's really, really well known. I would say that's first well known over even the wine. But maybe that's from my vantage point. I'm not sure.
Could be. I mean, the Czech Republic has some very good white wines.
Yeah.
We don't yet have a good climate for the best reds, but
by and large, people were going to Prague to drink beer. To have that experience of a Pilsner in Prague is just...
Yeah, and Prague is also like a culinary town, right?
Yeah,
like you could get a very good food.
Artistic, it's just a beautiful city to experience, and I highly recommend it just for the experience. The food is just so savory.
Yeah, it's not limited to Prague though.
No, no, I'm sure.
Like the second biggest city, Brno, which historically had closer ties to Vienna, has also very good food scene and drink scene.
Primo, yeah.
And also other, let's say, cities. A bigger city closer to where I come from is Tábor, and has some very good restaurants and some enthusiasts into really fermented stuff.
In your experience, coming here to the U.S., you've been here for not even a year, is that true?
Yeah, just 7 months.
7 months.
Too short.
Right.
Well, we are not sure. We asked for 10 months, but with the inflation that's been raging around here, so the Fulbright program just had some certain amount of money, and they calculate the living costs. So they say, well, we can just cover 7 months for you.
Yeah.
We would love to stay longer. We fell in love with the place.
Yeah, I could understand that. Now that you've been here for a while, in terms of accessibility for cider, where you are up around Dartmouth, right?
Yeah, that's easy.
Easy.
Really.
And no comparison to like back in Prague. Would be harder in Prague, would you say that, to find cider than it is here while you're in the US?
Well, here it's really easy. But
okay, good.
Again, I would comparing this Upper Valley area.
Right.
So
are you saying Upper Wall or Upper Valley?
Upper Valley.
Upper Valley.
Yeah.
See, I'm from New England. I don't even know. That's like the slang for...
Yeah, the people call this the Upper Valley because on the highway, on the freeway towards Concord, you have to cross the mountains, right?
Right.
So, and then you have these cities like Lebanon, West Lab, Canaan.
Yeah.
So the economy is centered around this, right? And the university and the huge hospital. So it's an affluent community.
Dartmouth Hitchcock Hospital. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we were thinking, okay, like Hanover, it's like a small town in the middle of woods, and then we found out it's so damn expensive to rent a living here.
Yeah. I know it is, and that's kind of the way it is right now. And where we're sitting, just for folks who aren't sitting with us, right behind us is the Connecticut River.
Yeah.
And it's very narrow here from where you just go down into Massachusetts and the river really widens out. But we're just out on a beautiful park.
Yeah, we are actually sitting next to a dam. Just below us is a Wilder Dam, so this part of the river is quiet. It's been frozen all winter. frozen all over. People were
You've been traveling around a bit, haven't you, with your family?
Well, just a little bit.
A little bit. Oh, it's nice. I mean, you chose this location, and I've never stopped here, so.
Yeah. So back to your original questions.
Yeah.
Like, there's a small store in Hanover. There's a co-op. There's a couple of locations around. You can get local stuff. Vermont and New Hampshire produce cheese, beer, and cider. But if you go south, there's a commercial area in West Lebanon. So if you do go to Hannaford, I haven't checked much the other ones.
The grocery store, Hannaford. Large grocery store.
So they would have a little bit smaller selection than the co-op because
probably more industrial cider than the.
But not necessarily just that. Okay. So you can get cider pretty easily in here. Fantastic. And there's a few cideries not so far away. So
no, there isn't. I mean, just to give people some more geography. So right over in Vermont, you would have Flag Hill Cider, one of the oldest cideries in the country. That's with Sebastian Luceder. And then just going down south by Lebanon, where Dan was just mentioning, you would have Farnham Hill.
Yeah, and there's also Patch Orchards, which I think they also do make hard cider.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cideries around here. Yeah.
There's Champlain Orchards. So there's a bit of that. I mean, in terms of apple trees, it's completely different than what we would have back home, because I mean, these countries grow the best rocks, right?
Well, I mean, it's all relative. You know, there's a lot of different terroir. The US is a big
so you'll see an occasional apple tree at a former pasture, like where we are staying. So there's a nice little hill called Balge Hill, where you can just choose one of the trails and hike up, and there are a few apple trees on top of the hill. So
maybe it was an old homestead or something like that.
Yeah, it was. It was really a pasture place, and so there are a few old maples, really old trees. But other than that, it's this typical like young New England forest.
Well, New England has lots of small orchards tucked in everywhere, and if you go down to like Adams County, Pennsylvania, which is on the border of Maryland, it's just massive orchards. You just drive through, and it's kind of like you're going through different sections of Normandy. Right. And of course, if you go out to like Washington State, you know, it's just orchards on steroids. Yeah.
Well, what you'll usually have in Czech Republic, each house that is a garden would most likely have some apple trees, some fruit trees. Not so much here. Just very rarely someone has an apple tree next to their house. So.
And how are people pressing their apples? What kind of pressing setup do they have?
Well, I guess anything they can get.
Like a barrel? Yeah. You grind it up, you know?
I mean, there's a wine industry, so there are shops. So you can get a hydraulic press. Or you can get this hydro press that you will fill the bladder with pressurized water. Right. You can get a small press for the garden, like that would have a capacity of, I don't know, a gallon and a half or something like that, sizing higher. Right. So there's all kinds of stuff you can get.
It's all accessible. Yeah. And is it?
There's a second-hand market. Like I mean, someone just gives it a try and then find out they don't have the time for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So very similar. Is there particular styles that you see, and maybe we could relate it to your experience here in the U.S.? You know, we have everything from the industrial style, kind of modern cider, to that really more tannic structure, kind of, you would find like a New England cider would have that good acid balance, good tannic structure, something like from Farnham Hill or Flag Hill would be like that.
I guess you would have all kinds of styles. Yeah, like you would have, let's say, Utopia cider, Utopia. If I'm not mistaken, he took a Peter Mitchell course, but he just says, I don't want to do it this way. Okay. He just completely parted his way with this, and he's just going for the natural way. No intervention. Right. He can go really hardcore. So he's really doing just spontaneous ferments. They bought a small. It's not a castle, but it's like a small fort, a medieval fort or something like that.
Ooh, fun.
Very beautiful place, close to my hometown. So they are fermenting in the former stables in oak barrels.
Well, we're in relationship to Prague, would that be then?
It's like 60 miles to the south, like a little bit
Okay.
over an hour.
Okay, not too bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we are a small country.
You are a small country,
Yeah.
but you know, mighty in so many ways.
A little bit densely populated because we are not as hilly
Yeah.
in other
But
places.
if you were visiting, you would want to have a car to be able to drive out to all the cideries, right? It's not public transport in that way. It's not really doable.
Well, public transport used to be much more frequent because everyone got a car, or it's easy to get a car. But yeah, you could reach some ciders definitely just by hopping on the train.
How is Petro to get there? Is it very expensive
Petrol?
versus what you're seeing here in the U.S.?
Well, I guess the average price would be like a double.
Double, okay.
Double of what you have,
Yeah.
but on the other hand,
Liters.
you will have a bit more efficient cars. So the running costs,
A little
like
bit lower.
compared to the salary,
Yeah.
it wouldn't probably be too different.
Now, we don't really see Czech ciders being exported by and large. Is there any brand that we should know about that is exported that we can maybe get outside of the...
Well, definitely Evolaurin that I mentioned is exporting. If you just send him a message that you would want a pallet of cider, he will happily send it to you.
He'll make it happen, yeah.
And I guess he's not the only one. So.
Is there anything that would really surprise us about Czech ciders that folks wouldn't think about? You know, and you obviously are well-traveled and you've been listening to Cider Chat. You have a sense of cider in the world, but is there something uniquely specific to Czech ciders overall, or can we kind of expect that same kind of model that we're seeing worldwide?
I would think it would be pretty similar. In general, it would be pretty similar. I mean, the people who have started earlier and who have, let's say, France or Spain or England as their inspiration, so they've invested some efforts into planting their own orchards. So some of these people already have a decent harvest of tannic apples. But other than that, there are culinary apples. There are people who are basically going through the woods and searching for wild seedlings, and if they find something they like, they would just graft it and grow it.
So are there grafting parties or like gatherings?
No, not that I know of, but I guess it's a heritage of the communist era that you would have like, gardening groups. So like my hometown would have, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 like these areas where we would have something like, 400 square meters. What would it be? 4,000 feet.
Yeah.
A small plot, but they will be growing their fruits and vegetables, and they would obviously be exchanging ideas and stuff. There's a gardening magazine that would be probably like organizing stuff like that or facilitating the exchange.
So are you seeing cider going up then in the Czech Republic in this short amount of time right now?
Obviously.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, there are also a few universities, so some of the people who are interested in cider, they would, let's say, write a bachelor thesis about cider and doing some experiments about that. The Masaryk University in Brno is running a course that's focused on, let's say,
cider making?
Not cider making. It's focused about more on like apple growing, like extensive orcharding, and I did it. It was a fabulous experience, and I know of some other people who are making cider who have been through this course. So you'll get a very nice knowledge about apple phenology. You get to know something about the pests, how to prune the tree, how to manage the orchard.
Pretty multidimensional in terms of the orcharding all the way to the cider making.
There's
great.
plenty of old books which you basically can get in a library or in a like antique bookshop for almost nothing, and just get the information.
So we're talking about apples. There's two other fruits I want to talk about, or maybe a couple more, but
Right.
I want to talk about pears.
Okay.
How about peri pears? What are you seeing there? Is there any
Well,
type of peri pear experience happening?
I'm not really sure whether someone has been putting much effort into that. I did play with it. I'm waiting because I found a tree that's basically this line of trees around the road, right? There was a pear that's been cut down, but the rootstock was so vigorous and it just put so many shoots, and it has small tannic fruit. And I did harvest them one season, and they did spontaneously keef, and it made such a beautiful perry. But I hadn't had the luck of replicating this again. But I did graft these, so I'm waiting for them to be bigger so that I can give them proper place.
Fantastic. How about Sorbus domestica?
Yeah, there's a history of those. Like you had Vidar Došek, he wrote a very nice book about them.
Right. I mean, I would think if there's a museum.
There, yeah.
And where is that related to in Prague, like north, south, east, west, where the museum is located?
It's closer to the border with Slovakia and Austria. It's in the southeast part.
And that's considered part of the Czech Republic?
Yeah. It's a warmer area. It's a wine growing area. And so the trees over there, they have more tradition.
Yeah.
And then there's another area that's like 40 minutes north of Prague, where you can find old Sorbus domestica in the wild. Mm-hmm. And that's been a fruit growing area. It's on the Elbe River, and in the past people were just growing fruit and drying it and sending it on the boats downstream to Germany.
Yeah. I mean, I could really see as a trip I'd want to take is to land into Prague, experience of the food, the culture, the sightseeing, and then fanning out into some of the cideries, and also going to Moravia, the chocolate pears, and visiting that area too for the museum and that experience, because I've seen definitely an increased interest in Sorbus domestica, because I've been talking about it a lot on the podcast, and it's a cool tree.
You became a friend with the tree, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Maybe it could make friends with the talking palms, right?
Well, we wonder. You know, I mean, it's a very elusive tree. It's into social distancing, although there are 2 Sorbus domestica trees that we have in our little orchard there, so you know, not everybody talks all the time. So, but maybe they'll come out. You know, how would a Sorbus domestica might have a partially like your accent there? I see, perhaps I don't know.
Well, not necessarily.
That's true.
We've been to Italy, to Tuscany, and you just where was it? It was San Gimignano. You go on like a little square, and there are Sorbus domestica with like beautiful big fruits.
Oh my goodness! He just held up his hand, putting his like index finger to his thumb. That's
like a large plum.
Yeah, nice. Wow. I wonder if they're using it to ferment at all or something.
Well, I guess here it was just decorative, but I mean, the tree likes warmer climate, obviously.
I'm excited about that. That you know, there is such a fan base in the Czech Republic around Sorbus domestica, the chocolate pears.
These people are basically, centered about the Masaryk University in Brno. The university has gardening or horticulture faculty. If I'm not mistaken, so Vidar Došek is affiliated to this university. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I never met him personally. I met a colleague of his.
Yeah, and I haven't met him, only Ben, who helped translate it, check the translation into English. It is in English too now, so and that's the copy that I have. So, which makes sense, because it would be hard for me to read otherwise. But it's a beautiful book with lots of photos and these giant Sorbus domestica trees, and it just makes me extremely happy, because I do find it's a very pleasant fruit to just eat,
Yeah.
you know, like kind of custardy.
Yeah, you can make a nice jam with that.
And they do.
We have one in our little orchard,
Oh,
so it's in
Is this your home orchard or?
Yeah,
Nice.
it's in its 7th year, so let's say 3-4 more years to
Fantastic.
start
Okay.
bearing some fruits.
Yeah. How about mixed ciders with fruit? Is that pretty typical too, as we see here in the U.S.?
From what I see, so the smaller producers would be mainly apple-based.
Okay. Great.
There is not so much experimenting with
with currants or
pineapples or spices or whatever. Like I think there are some people who are making a cider.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We are a beekeeping country. Some people even say we are like a little bit. We have an overpopulation of bees in some areas.
Interesting. Wow.
Because
so many beekeepers.
Yeah. Where our garden/orchard is, there are multiple people attending bees.
Do you see anybody working with quince at all?
Well, I do have a tree.
Okay, good. We like that. Do you know what the variety is?
I'll recall. I'm not sure.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And
Are you?
yeah, you could see them more often in like farmers market in the autumn.
Are they edible, like raw edible kind of quince? Because we see that like down in Latin America.
Yeah, no, we like I bought this tree in Germany, and I guess it's a common European quince that you need to really boil. So that we like to make marmalade of it.
All right.
Nice. We tried this like South Italian style that you will have really this brown, very dense stuff. It's got so much pectin. When you boil it, you can pour it into forms, and we use this as like Christmas cookies.
Oh my goodness! Oh, that sounds delicious. Well, they're a lovely tree to have in any orchard because they're beautiful.
Yeah, I love the blossoms.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is the time. How about medlars?
We do have two in the garden, but
you have quite a little specimen garden.
Yeah, but I mean, we bought the garden 9 years ago, and the medlars have been planted there. And the trees are older, and one of them is in the shade of a huge oak, so that doesn't produce very good fruit. The other one is okay.
Yeah.
But if we have capacity, so we try to make some of it or just eat some. But I did make a distillate out of it. It's okay.
Okay.
Nothing special. I like the apple brandy better.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about that. You found out you need to make the cider, and then you needed to distill it. Was the technique to learn how to make distilling something that you learned at that university?
No.
This is self-taught?
There's so much resources on the internet.
Okay. And is that legal for people to distill at home then?
Well,
or should we talk about this?
It's sort of like if you make it for yourself and don't push it on the market, then nobody cares.
Okay. Wow, that's great. That's
But I mean, it's still a little bit in the shade. From what I know, in Austria, you can distill at home. It's not illegal. You can just basically declare that to the tax authorities, this year I've made this much, and you would pay a fair share of taxes.
Okay.
And as a result, it's an open thing, and people do discuss. They discuss how to make it better. In Czech Republic, you would have plenty of home distillers. Some of them doing good stuff, and some of them seeing it just like that it would be a cheap way to make some booze.
But you're going for a very, very particular product, and Calvados, as you well know, is dictated to have certain kind of apple varieties.
Yeah,
and
I can't unfortunately replicate on that.
So what type of apple varieties are we looking at then in the Czech Republic? Are there like really popular apples that people are using for cider making?
Well, I guess everyone uses what they have available. Your family has an orchard and plenty of apples, so you're using what you got, right? And then it obviously depends on your experience and taste preference, because you obviously know all that. Yeah. Too much acid is too much.
Yes.
Not enough acid makes a bland drink. Right. You will have either vintage varieties, let's say, time-proven varieties that made it through all the frosts and stuff like
Well,
that.
I guess what I'm asking, is there a Czech apple that everybody has in their garden or next to their home? Are there popular varieties? Like here in the U.S., people are used to be Red Delicious,
Right.
or Macintosh. Mac, I think, makes a great cider.
You would have these good varieties.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
there was a wave of Czech immigration, mainly towards the big lakes. Like in the past, one Czech guy made even a mayor of Chicago.
That's right. Yeah.
So there has been a cultural exchange. So, like, if you look into the pomology books, it's like Rhode Island greening and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bunch of the vintage varieties from the US, from Russia, and there are also Czech varieties that would be, say, but I mean, what's a Czech variety, right? If it's a cross of Golden Delicious and, let's say, Macintosh.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a Czech variety? Well, someone crossed it in the Czech Republic and selected that
I
seed.
guess so.
And it went good and gave it a Czech name. So
Yeah.
now it's a Czech variety, right?
Yeah, right.
So there are plenty of those, and some of them
Okay.
with very good taste.
Mm.
I didn't yet see too much of a popularity for the crisps.
Cosmic crisp. Something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. Maybe that just in time it will come about. But
Well, our favorite eating apple is a kanzi.
is the what?
Kanzi, K-N-Z-I.
Kanzi.
Yeah, if you have a chance to see it in the market, try it out. It's
I will try it. I
really delicious, juicy, balanced apple.
Yeah. So that's not an apple that I'm familiar with.
Right. Yeah, we know it from Europe, and we are able to get them here, so that's nice. The trees that I have in my garden, so I would have.
And what kind of area? Let's start there. So you have. It sounds like you're saying garden, interchanging that with orchard.
Well, I mean, it's about an acre in size, right?
Okay, that's a good size.
But we are on a sandstone formation, so a lot of it is not very good for
Right,
growing.
right,
So I think we are basically using for our gardening like a third of the area.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are something like 15 apple trees, I would say like 80 years old.
Great.
Some of them declining. Our area is a little bit prone to drought because the sandstone topsoil won't retain so much moisture.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really stressful for the trees, you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a few Red Delicious.
You have Red Delicious.
Yeah,
Okay. Interesting.
I have 3 trees. I think the American name is Nonetit. I don't know if you know it.
Nonetit.
Yeah. The Czech translation would be a mother's apple.
Okay.
Then there's one, I know it going, it's like a raspberry Dutch apple. I don't know if it's the official name. So it has a little bit reddish flesh.
Mm.
Then
And you're using that just for cider, or no?
well,
Maybe eating?
Eating and cider.
Okay,
And then I have a tree of Kronsel, which is juicing apple. It's not so good an eating apple, but makes like a third of the juice every year.
Mm-hmm.
I have an orange cox, which is a really delicious eating apple.
Lovely apple.
So the mix of apples I have gives me pretty balanced cider with some smallish amount of tannins.
Mm-hmm.
My wife, she's a chemist by education. She moved more into studies in ecology and like nutrients flow in soil. So when we purchased the garden, we did run some analysis of the juices. The tannins weren't high, but they weren't zero, right?
And are these all like dwarf trees, or are they?
No,
larger?
these are standard trees.
Standard trees on an acre. That sounds good.
And I have planted 8 dwarf dabinets, which only last year started bearing like
A little bit of fruit.
well, something that you could call a harvest, right?
Okay,
Not
well.
just one fruit here and 2 fruits there.
And
Unfortunately, like we took just enough baggage to get what we need, so I just wasn't able to load a suitcase with cider to share with you.
oh, well, what are you going to do? That's for another time. You are a cider enthusiast, and you have a nice little orchard. Do you sometimes think about maybe like Well, it sounds like you can sell it a little bit.
I mean,
No problem so far.
I had the idea that I would basically just make a stand by the road, right? And
Right.
put a sign when
Like
we are
honey.
there.
Yeah.
But I guess that's still a long way to go because
Is there regulations on that because it's alcohol to have a stand on the road like that?
I would definitely have to sort out some paperwork
Okay,
to be
all right,
able
that's
to
what I'm wondering,
do that
right.
because otherwise,
Some
like,
taxes.
I mean, just so I put a stand, it works for a few months, and then someone just thinks, this is weird. Maybe I should just notify authorities, and then there will be some explaining.
Some trouble, yeah.
So that's
Makes sense.
you can't build on that, right?
Right, yeah, of course. Huh.
Or like you want to make a huge fortune, like being undercover.
Yeah, little black market.
And I mean, like my production in the best years would be, I don't know, 300-400 liters of juice.
Mm-hmm.
So you would need to be bigger than that. You sell 20 crates and you're out.
Is there any kind of cider guild or organization?
Yeah, it's a little bigger producers that already had some commercial
Okay,
presence
so-
formed an organization basically
Okay.
to be able to further the interest of cider people.
Well, it sounds like you just have this burgeoning country that has this long history.
For cider enthusiasts, it's a worthwhile stop.
Oh,
When
it sure
We
is.
have very nice mountains, worth hiking.
Oh, and just the city of Prague alone, the history that is there is just incredible. Those clock towers and to see the
Yeah.
display, and people used to communicate via the towers. And I remember there was a theater, like a blacklight theater in Prague, that's just really worth experiencing. Kind of not something that necessarily is really well known to the average tourist, but if you hunt it down, there's some really special things to do there. And then you have Dan, who's this major cider enthusiast. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's been fun.
Well, that was fun talking to a cider enthusiast from the Czech Republic. Up next, we're going to be going to that audio clip from the Flower Expo as I have a little bit of self-interest here is that I really want to help folks learn how to talk to media and to see the crossover industries at the same time, because there's a lot of crossover when you're talking with farmers. And our guest here is going to be a farmer, just like orchardists out there, doing sun-grown cannabis in this case. And what was really cool is how he just met immediately the media chit-chat. He knew how to deliver with a couple key takeaways, I think, for anybody who gets nervous talking to media or is wondering how to tell your story without sounding like a salesperson. His name is Bowie, and he is the co-owner of Paper Crane Cannabis. And in this case, he told a story, not just a product line. He was really weaving in a personal narrative. He brought in apples that really caught me, creating very strong brand positioning. He stated exactly what makes Paper Crane unique. And then strong strategic product placement without sounding salesy, right? So he highlighted their main products. He created a little bit of a call to action, you'll hear, where he told you exactly how to find his products, where to go, how it is found on their website, and then really created a whole value-based language, which is all about sustainability, which for the cider world it rings true for us too. So definitely a lot of takeaways from here, and once again looking at crossover industries as we continue to work on growing the cider audience. So without further ado, let's go to this audio snapshot from the Flower Expo, which was held in Northampton, Massachusetts this past June 2025, and hear from Bowie of Paper Crane Cannabis.
Paper Crane Cannabis is a family-owned legacy organic, regenerative, sun-grown cannabis farm in north central Massachusetts. The waste that is sort of rampant in the cannabis industry, and it's something we think a lot about, being sun growers and being regenerative growers as well. We're looking to make a net positive impact on our piece of earth and the community at large, and it is always concerning thinking about the waste and the consumption of large indoor cultivation. And it's obviously one of the biggest concerns for communities. And I'm all in on the regenerative movement. Just speaking about apples, I happen to be a little bit of an apple fanatic. So I'm an amateur sort of apple seeker.
Oh,
I guess.
Awesome.
So, and we actually in Hubbardston, where Paper Crane is located, our town has a local apple indigenous to the town called the Nunsuch apple, I guess, which
very
is
unique apple.
Very unique apple, and there's only a couple trees in Hubbardston, and they're ancient trees as well. So, I think they need to do some like grafting and propagating of that particular one. But I love apples. I'm from South Florida originally, and so when I came up to New England, the apple season was one of my sort of one of the things I fell in love with up here. And being a flavor and sort of terpene and flavonoid obsessed person that I am, owning a cannabis company and growing for primarily flavor and effect, apples are like a major love of mine. Every year I go up to Poverty Lane to
Farnham Hill.
To Farnham Hill,
Steve and Louisa.
And I always love those deep heirloom apple menus that these New England orchards have, and it's very near and dear to my heart. I do a lot of baking with apples. I actually baked in one of my former lives. I was a professional baker, so I make the French tarte tatin. I make a few different apple coffee cakes. So apple season is big in the Paper Crane household.
I love that. That's awesome.
No, Paper Crane is we're available in about 80 retail cannabis stores, dispensaries across the state, and we're known for our basically high terpene, organic, all flower 1 gram pre-roll. So when we were coming to the market in 2024. And when I say coming to the market, I put that in quotation marks. My family's been in the weed business almost 70 years. So when we were coming to the legal mass market, I took a step back and just tried to see what was, getting the least attention product-wise. And the pre-roll had really become a throwaway for trim and shake because the value of the flower was so high in that early emerging market. So, I have a 3-acre farm, I grow all, pheno-hunted, clone-specific cultivars, and I grow them for pre-rolls. So all of my best herb that we grow is, craft-cured, dried properly, craft-cured, hand-bucked, destemmed by hand, and then ground in small batches into the pre-roll. So they have no shake and trim. They have no duff whatsoever. So it's the opposite of what most other companies do, which is they put their best weed in jars and then they put trim and boof in their pre-roll. We have a very small team. I keep the cure of my weed correct and make sure everything is right on point, and I grind it all, and it's been working for us. We have a very dedicated customer base, and we're really known for that pre-roll and our multi-packs. We do a 6-pack, an 8-pack, and a half ounce as well. And the price point is always really good because we are sun growers, so we're not really plugged into the grid. And
so you're outside?
We're outside in open field and also in Hoop House and Caterpillar Tunnel as well.
Very cool.
So,
wow, very sustainable.
Yeah, and that's the name of the game. I try and even buy my inputs from local farms, and get my fish emulsion from the North Shore, and
nice.
Just try to keep everything local. And one other thing I would like to just mention, if people are checking out Paper Crane, we are a legacy company. So like I said, my family's been in the biz for a while, but all of my cultivators are also legacy market growers who are being displaced by the legal market and who are now cultivating under the Paper Crane banner. So there's not a lot of really amazing growers out there. You'd be surprised. And I have a group of really good ones. So the pre-roll is a winner in our organic full spectrum sun-grown BHO oil carts. Are also amazing, very therapeutic, incredible full spectrum oil, which is there's also not a lot of it out there. Most of the carts out there are distillate and are just designed to get you high. Ours have all the secondary cannabinoids, are just loaded with all the goodies, and those are screaming on the market right now as well.
Fantastic. And if folks want to seek you out and seek the company out, is there a domain that we could?
There is. Please go to papercranecannabis.com. You can message us directly there, and also find us on Instagram at papercranecannabis. We're currently shadow banned. Our account is deactivated on Instagram right now, but should be live in the next couple days. It happens all the time in this industry, unfortunately. But papercranecannabis.com will get you there, and we have a heat map on the homepage that will show you with little icons exactly where the products are located in your region of the state.
Clear, concise, and concrete. Bowie knew the assignment. He knew how to pull in a totally different industry with some storytelling. Not a lot, just enough to lead us along. Talked about the main things that both industries are interested in, which is sustainability, farming in a way that is outside of the box, talking about regenerative farming. I mean, most of us would say, yeah, that's inside the box, but a lot of people don't know about it. Pulled that in and talked about organic product too, and how he's really going for quality. And that's something that cider makers are always talking about, how we separate ourselves from the pack by creating an individual product. And our case for cider is a certain kind of variety that we love, or a certain flagship cidery. And for him, it was the pre-rolls and how they do it differently from everybody else. And that sticks with you when you are listening as a consumer of a product, or just in general. It sticks with you. So I hope you're getting some value from these two different audio snapshots. You could listen to the Apple Guy Flowers in last week's episode with Zydeco Meadery. That was number 463. Find it at ciderchat.com. And before we roll out of here, I want to remind you once again that the concerts and campouts are starting on July 5th at Art and Sciences Rochando Farm in Oregon. And over in the Netherlands, on August 16th, there's a Cider Fest at De Groot Vij Cidery. That means the Great Meadow Cidery. And that's being hosted by Sophie. You can find links to all that and so much more for this here episode by going to ciderchat.com, put in the little search box, episode 464, or just put in Czech Republic. It'll come up that way too. And while you're there, please hit the donate button if you've got value from this podcast, and definitely do become a patron of Cider Chat by joining the Cider Chat Patreon page. You just Google Cider Chat and Patreon. That's spelled Patreon. And with that, I leave you here. This is Rio Windcaller signing off for now. Looking forward to seeing you in Ciderville.
We like cider. We like palms. We love orchards and having fun. There is a reason. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. We like cider. We like palms. We like orchards, having some fun. There is a reason. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet.
Oh yeah.
We like cider.
Oh yes we do.
We like palms.
Oh yes we do.
We love orchards, having some fun. There is a reason why we do it like this.
Ba-da-da-dum.
There's a reason why we do it like this.
Ba-da-da-dum.
There is a reason why we drink it like this.
Ba-da-da-dum.
Ba-da-da-dum. We like walking down the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet.
Oh yeah.
We like cider.
Ba-da-da-dum.
We like palms.
Oh yes we do.
We like orchards, having some fun.